This is the IELTS listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. Now turn to Part 1.
Part 1.
You will hear a telephone conversation between a hotel receptionist and a caller making a reservation. Seconds to look at questions 1 to 7. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 7.
Silver Tulip Hotel, good afternoon. How can I help you?
Yes. Good afternoon. I'd like to book a room for next Friday.
Certainly, sir. How many nights will you be staying?
Just one, please.
And would you like a single or double room?
A double room, please.
A double room. And would you like twin beds or a king-size bed?
A king-sized bed, please.
Let me see. Yes, we do have a double room available for next Friday. Would you like me to book it for you?
Yes, please.
Could I have your name, please?
Yes, it's Edward Francis.
Is that Frances?
No, it's Francis.
Francis.
Yes, that's right.
And your home address, please, sir?
Yes, it's 23 Cypress Avenue, Cambridge.
Is that Cyprus?
No, Cypreess, like the tree.
Oh, I see. And your postcode is?
CB3 9NF.
And it's just for one night?
Yes, that's right.
We can reserve a parking space for you. Are you coming by car?
Actually, I'll be taking a taxi from the station.
That's fine. And one last question. Would you like dinner and breakfast?
No dinner, thank you. But I'd like breakfast.
Just breakfast. So, to confirm, you're arriving on Friday the 16th of April and leaving on Saturday the 17th. That's one night in a double room with a king-size bed with breakfast.
That's right. Thank you very much.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, in the exam you will have 20 seconds to look at questions 8 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 8 to 10.
And could I have your mobile number, please?
Yes, it's 07976 122 577. No, sorry, it's been changed. It's 07961 121 597.
07961 121 597. Thank you. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Yes, I'm having dinner with a friend. Could you recommend a good restaurant nearby?
That would be the Winston Churchill. It's about a mile from here.
Perfect. Could you please make a reservation for 7 p.m. and leave a message with the details for my friend when he arrives?
Certainly. What is the gentleman's name?
Mr. Alaoui. That's Alaoui.
No problem. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2. You will hear a tutor and some students discussing choosing courses at a college.
First, look at questions 11 to 14. Listen carefully.
As you know, this week you choose your modules for the first year of study. So this introductory meeting is aimed at helping you make informed choices. I think the best way to do this is on a question and answer basis. So, who'd like to start? Pat?
Yes. There's something I've been wondering about. Will my choice affect my career opportunities?
Well, for most students, the choice of Level 1 modules won't be crucial in terms of a later career. In fact, many graduate-level jobs will accept graduates from a range of degree courses. Employers will often be at least as interested in how well a student has performed academically and how the whole experience of university has developed the student as a person, as in the detail of the course options chosen. Selecting modules that will interest you and in which you think you will be particularly successful is therefore also likely to make good sense in career terms. On certain degree courses, though, module choice can be important. This applies mainly to vocational courses, where the degree confers an accredited professional training, as well as university education. Usually the modules students are required to take will include all those needed to meet those professional requirements. Your academic department, in this case Chemical and Process Engineering, and the university's career service will be able to advise you, and will be pleased to help you sort out anything you're not certain about.
Right.
Before the broadcast continues, look at questions 15 to 20. You will now listen to the second part of the talk.
I'd like to ask a few things about the Applied Chemical Engineering module.
Fine. What would you like to know?
Well, apart from the work on practical engineering, what other topics are covered?
Some that might surprise you. One that students always seem to like includes interviewing techniques, presentation skills, and producing written reports.
They sound interesting. How are they taught?
Through lectures, practical classes, and personal tutorials. Applied chemical engineering lasts all year, of course, so there's plenty of time.
And what about assessment?
Through project work, usually, or dissertation. Not exams as such.
Is that the same for the information technology part of the module?
Yes, things like word processing and learning to create spreadsheets are tested in a similar way on this module.
That's not the case in some other modules, is it?
No, it isn't. Are you thinking of any in particular?
Yes, I'm considering doing fluid mechanics.
Ah.
The work on flow analysis looks interesting and I like the look of some of the other topics too. So, how is that module tested?
That's one of those which still uses written exams. The sit-down formal type, I'm afraid.
Oh, that doesn't matter. I quite like that kind, as it happens.
Pat, you've got a question.
Yes. I was wondering about Science 1 in chemical engineering. How is that organised? It's a bit different from other modules, isn't it?
Yes, it aims to give the necessary basis of physics and biology for those students who haven't studied the relevant subjects at A-level or equivalent. In practice, it means that students who have already studied physics are excused the physics lectures, while those who've done biology are exempt from attending the biology lectures. In the second part of the module, you're assessed on your project work in one of those subjects.
And does the teaching approach differ too?
Yes, particularly in one respect. You're encouraged to learn by working out the solutions to problems for yourself.
I like the sound of that.
OK. Anything else?
Yes, I believe it's possible to do a modern language as part of the course. Can you tell me a bit about the Spanish 1A module?
Certainly. The main emphasis in 1A is on understanding and speaking, but students also learn to carry out some straightforward reading and writing tasks. Basic aspects of grammar are also introduced and practiced. The module comprises 36 hours of class contact, mainly in tutorial groups of 16 to 20, and students are expected to do approximately 64 hours of private study.
It sounds interesting. I did some Spanish at the Cervantes Institute last year. Passed an exam, in fact.
Ah, I'm afraid that means you can't do 1A.
Oh.
The regulations say this module may not be taken by students with a qualification in Spanish, though you could do 1B.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3. You will hear part of a lecture about tourism in the leisure industry.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
In today's lecture, we'll begin with an overview of the impact of tourism on the societies and cultures of the host area. Then we'll look at some case studies. One model for the socio-cultural impact of tourism has been provided by Doxey. You'll find a reference in your reading list. He called his model the Irridex. That's a contraction of Irritation Index, and it attempts to show how the attitudes of local people to tourists and tourism change over the years. Doxey identifies 4 stages. He calls the first stage euphoria, happiness, because initially the tourists are regarded as a novelty. And because of this, they're welcomed by everyone in the host area. But as well as that, there's another reason for the people in the host community to welcome tourists. Local people realise that tourism brings scope for economic benefits. As tourist development begins to increase, however, local interest in the visitors becomes sectionalised. That means that some sections of the local population become involved with tourists, while others don't. And it is increasingly the case that commercial rather than social factors are influencing relationships between tourists and the host community. People are less interested in the tourists for their own sake. Doxey calls this stage apathy. If development continues to increase, apathy may change to annoyance. What's causing this? Well, development of the tourist area may start to spiral up out of control, and this is often accompanied by congestion, which is going to make life difficult for local people. So the policymakers, the government, the local authorities and so on provide more infrastructure for the area, more roads, more car parks and so on, to try to help cope with the influx of tourists. But the lives of the local people are made increasingly difficult, and in the final stage of the model, annoyance has turned to antagonism and open hostility to the tourists. And now, all the detrimental changes to lifestyles in the host area are, fairly or unfairly, seen as due to the tourists.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Well, this sort of pathway is certainly a fairly good reflection of what happens in some tourist destinations. But Doxey's model has drawn a number of criticisms. The most significant is that it suggests a very negative attitude to the socio-cultural effects of tourism. The fact that the model is unidirectional, that it only works in one direction, seems to suggest that decline in the host-visitor relationship is inevitable. Now, in practice, fortunately, things aren't always quite like that. If you look at real situations, you'll see that the relationships between local people and tourists are rather more complicated and prone to greater variation than this model suggests, so the model is really rather oversimplified. In fact, studies have highlighted quite a few positive effects of tourism. For example, Doxey's model doesn't look at the effects on the tourists themselves. They may well benefit from increased understanding of the host society and culture. Then, traditional crafts in the host area may be revitalised because tourism provides new markets, such as the souvenir trade, for example. So, instead of these traditional skills being lost, local people are encouraged to develop them. There may also be more long-lasting changes, which actually lead to the empowerment of both groups and individuals in the host area. For example, tourism creates openings for employment for women, and through giving them a chance to have a personal income, it allows them to become more independent. In addition, because tourism tends to work through a very few languages that have worldwide usage, those working in the tourist industry may be encouraged to acquire new languages, and this will empower them through providing wider access to globalized media and improving their job prospects in a wider context. Right, now we'll take a short break there, and then we'll look at a couple of case studies and see how far the points we've discussed so far apply to them.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will now hear a speaker talking about student loans.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Thanks for turning up today and welcome to this short talk on student loans. What you'll hear from me today are a few starting points, which should guide you in the right direction for what is suited for you. I'm assuming that most of you have an account at a bank or building society that you can draw funds from. These funds will either be your own or through a loan you may have with the bank. You may even have a credit card you can use. If you don't have a bank account, I suggest you open one with one of the major banks. It's the best option as you will find major banks have more outlets. Within the city and in close proximity to the university are HSBC in City Plaza, Barclays in Ragdale Square, National Westminster in Preston Park, and Halifax in Hope Street. At this stage, I just want to inform international students that not all the services available for resident students will be available to you. As international students, you need to provide documentation stating that you have funds available to see you through the duration of your study. Different banks have different policies, so search out the one that will benefit you the most. You will also need to provide a photocopy of your passport and certification of your enrolment in the university. The most common way of taking out a student loan is either through the university or through a banking institution. If you decide to go with the university, again, you need to supply certification of enrolment and passport if you're an international student, or if you're a resident, you will only need the enrolment details. One word of warning is that you need to be clear on the interest you will be paying on your loan. The interest level through some universities is almost as much as the loan itself. So, if you borrow £10,000, you might have to pay back close to 20. Also, with student loans through the university, you have a limited time to pay them back, and this time is not flexible. You might have only 1 year. You might have 5. As I said, different universities have different policies. This university, for example, has an interest rate of 23.5%. It's quite high, but not as high as many of the other larger universities. The other option is to take out a loan through your bank. You will find that most banks will have lower interest rates than the university. They average roughly between 14.5 to 18.5%. Banks also give you an option of over how many years you want to make repayments. You can basically choose to pay it back in a year or in 10, even more if you are finding it difficult. Make sure you have an account with the bank you decide to go with. Either a current account or a savings account is enough. With either of these accounts, you can use your card to make withdrawals and deposits from automatic teller machines at any time, and make payments over the internet if you choose. You can also use Maestro, one of the systems which automatically take the money from your account at a time that you have specifically stated, and deposits it into a nominated account of your choice. You might decide to have £150 taken out each month, and each month this is what will happen. Also, check what fees apply with what services. Some services are free of charge, but they are few and far between. OK, so that's all from me. If there are any questions related to what I've covered today, please raise your hand.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.